It's the summer of 1975, and Queen is holed up at Rockfield Studio in rural Wales. They've booked an unusual amount of time, 3 full weeks, which for the era is almost unheard of. Most singles were recorded in a day, albums in a week. But Freddie Mercury has something in mind that no one else has fully seen yet. He's been carrying the idea for years. Scraps of melody, fragments of lyrics written in notebooks, pieces that don't obviously connect to each other. A ballad section, a hard rock section, something operatic in the middle. What Freddie brought to the band wasn't a demo. It wasn't a rough sketch. According to Brian May and Roger Taylor, he arrived at the studio with the song essentially complete in his head. Melody, structure, key changes, all of it. The piano part he played himself. The sections he'd labeled in his notes simply as, "This is where the opera part goes." Nobody asked him what that meant. They'd learned by then that with Freddie, the best approach was to start playing and trust the process. Roger Taylor later said he wasn't entirely sure. The ballad section came first, Freddie at the piano, vocals tracked in layers. Then the hard rock section, Brian May's guitar, Roger Taylor's drums, John Deacon's bass locked in tight. Each section recorded separately, as if they were 3 different songs. Then came the part that would define the entire recording, the opera section. Freddie wanted voices, dozens of them. He wanted the effect of a full operatic chorus. What followed was one of the most labor-intensive vocal sessions in rock history. Freddie, Brian, and Roger sang their parts over and over, each take layered on top of the last. The same 3 voices, recorded so many times that they began to sound like a cast of hundreds. Each part was tracked with precision, high harmonies, low harmonies, call and response passages. The staccato Galileo sequences that Freddie had mapped out note by note. They sang until their voices gave out. Here's where something extraordinary happened. Something that has become one of the quiet legends of the recording. Magnetic tape in 1975 had physical limits. Every time you added a new layer of sound, you were literally coating the tape with another thin layer of magnetic particles. After enough passes, the tape would begin to lose fidelity. After even more passes, it would start to deteriorate visibly. By the time they were deep into the opera section overdubs, the tape at Rockfield had been layered so many times that when they held it up to the studio lights, it had turned translucent. They could see light through it. According to the band's accounts, they were a few passes away from the tape becoming unusable in time. When they finally stepped back and listened to what they'd made, it ran to 5 minutes and 55 seconds, nearly 6 minutes. It had no traditional chorus. It changed tempo 3 times. It moved from a quiet piano ballad to a mock operatic sequence to a full hard rock section and back to a quiet piano conclusion. There was nothing else like it on radio. There had never been anything like it on radio. Freddie called it a mock opera. The rest of the band didn't have a name for it. They just knew it was unlike anything they'd recorded before. Queen's label, EMI Records, received the finished track, and responded with what can only be described as polite alarm. The standard for a commercial single in 1975 was 3 minutes, maybe 3.5. Radio stations had strict formats. DJs worked to tight playlists. A 6-minute song simply didn't fit. The label's position was straightforward: cut it down or don't release it as a single. Find the 3-minute version inside the 6-minute one. Make it work for radio. Freddie's response, by all accounts, was equally straightforward. It was Queen's manager John Reid who came up with the workaround. He gave a copy of the track to Kenny Everett, one of the most influential radio DJs in Britain at the time, based at Capital Radio in London. The instruction, reportedly, was to hold on to it, get a feel for it, but do not play it on air yet. Kenny Everett listened to it at home. Then he listened again. According to his own account, he couldn't. Over the course of 2 days, Kenny Everett played Bohemian Rhapsody on Capital Radio 14 times. Each time, the response was immediate. Listeners called in asking what the song was, where to buy it, when it was coming out. The volume of calls was something the station hadn't seen for a single track in years. The public had heard it, and the public had decided, without being. The label released Bohemian Rhapsody as a single on October 31st, 1975, at its full length. No edits, no cuts, 5 minutes and 55 seconds, exactly as Freddie had made it. It entered the UK charts and kept climbing. By November, it had reached number 1. It stayed there for 9 consecutive weeks, a record at the time for a single. Radio stations that had been told the song was too long to play were now playing it multiple times per day because listeners kept requesting it. EMI, to their credit, never. Bohemian Rhapsody didn't just succeed. It changed what a rock song was allowed to be. It demonstrated, with commercial proof, that an audience would follow a piece of music through radical changes in tone, tempo, and structure. If the music itself was strong enough, it opened a door. After Bohemian Rhapsody, the rules around single length became suggestions. The idea that a song needed a traditional chorus structure to connect with listeners had been tested against 6 minutes. Freddie Mercury died on November 24, 1991. Within days, radio stations across the UK and the United States began playing Bohemian Rhapsody in tribute. A year earlier, the song had appeared in the opening scene of Wayne's World, a film that introduced it to an entirely new generation of listeners. It re-entered the UK charts in 1991 and reached number 1 again. 16 years after its first run, it became the first song in British chart history to reach number 1 twice as a single. Today, it is the most streamed song of the 20th century on Spotify. A song that a record label said was too long, too strange, and too uncommercial.